In this YouTube, we're going to walk through the steps involved in adding an SQL Server database to a website using Microsoft Visual Web Developer 2010. We're going to add the SQL Server database, and then what we're going to do is we're going to add a table to the database, and we're going to populate several rows of data into the table. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an empty website. So in Microsoft Visual Web Developer, you're going to want to go up to the File, drop down option, and select New Website. Then from within the New Website window, underneath of Installed Templates, you're going to want to make sure that Visual Basic is selected. And then in the middle of the window, you're going to want to choose ASP.NET Empty Website. Okay, make sure you take note at the bottom of this window the location of where your website is going to be saved, okay, onto your laptop. Okay, the full path and the name, okay, of where the website is going to be saved is listed there for you at the bottom of this window in the web location field. Okay, so this particular website is going to be named Website 10, and there you can see the full path to where it's going to be saved. Okay, so after you've done that, you can push on the OK button, and you should have an empty website now generated for you in the Solution Explorer. Let's make that a little bit bigger. Okay, you can see the website there. Website 10 doesn't have any files in it yet. It's an empty website. Okay, but below in the Properties window there you can see the full path to where the website's been saved. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add an SQL Server database to this website. So in the Solution Explorer window, you're going to make sure that you have the website selected. Then you do a right click, and from within the pop-up that appears, you select Add New Item. And the Add New Item window should display. Underneath of Installed Templates, you want to make sure you keep Visual Basic selected, but then in the center of the window, you're going to want to scroll down a little bit. Until you see SQL Server Database. Okay, there it is. You want to select it. Okay, SQL Server Database. Okay, then down below at the bottom of the window, you can give your database a name if you want to. You can change this name. Right now it's simply called Database. Okay, you can change it to whatever you wish. I'm going to leave it named Database. Okay, but like I said, you can change it if you wish. Then you push on the Add button. And this dialog is probably going to pop up, okay, and that's okay that it does. All you want to do in the dialog is push the Yes button. And behind the scenes, Visual Web Developer should have added a database to your empty website. Okay, so if I go back to the Solution Explorer, okay, underneath of the website, I now have a folder that says App Data, and within that folder, I have my database, database.mdf. Okay, now to really work with the database, okay, you need to be in the Database Explorer window. Okay, I have tabs. I can toggle back and forth between the Solution Explorer window and the Database Explorer window. If you don't see the Database Explorer window, okay, that's okay. All you have to do is go up to, at the top of Visual Web Developer, the View drop-down option, okay, and then select Other Windows, and from within the pop-up that appears, you should see Database Explorer. Select that, and that should bring up the Database Explorer window for you so that you can see it. Okay, because from this point moving forward, okay, you're going to want to be in the Database Explorer window. Okay, so in the database.mdf, there are a bunch of folders for database diagrams, tables, views, stored procedures, functions, etc. Okay, what we're going to do right now is we're going to add a table to the tables folder. Right now, the tables folder is empty. It doesn't contain anything. We're going to add a table to it. Okay, so to add a table, what you want to do is you want to select the tables folder, do a right click, and then select Add New Table. Okay, and in the center of Visual Web Developer, you should see a tab that's opened up that says Table 1. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to define the columns that will be in this Table 1 tab. Okay, so the first column that I'm going to create is going to be named ID. Okay, and then I'm just going to simply hit Enter. And the next column that I'm going to create is going to be named Contact Reason. And then I'm simply going to hit Enter. And I'm going to give this table a few more columns, one for first name, one for last name, one for contact date, another for phone, and another for message. Okay, and that's it. Alright, so this particular table has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 columns. Okay, and that's it. That's all I'm going to give it. Okay, but right now you notice that all of the columns, they have the same data type, nchar 10, which basically means that each of the columns is going to store a string. Okay, well, I don't want these columns to be set up that way. Okay, they shouldn't all be set up to store strings. There are different data types that I'm going to associate with columns now. Okay, for example, with the ID, I want that column to be set up to store a number, an integer. So I'm going to change the data type from nchar 10 to, you have to scroll a little bit, so bear with me, int. Okay, so int stands for integer, and integer is a number. I want the ID to be set up so that it can store an integer, a number, like 1, 2, 3, 10, 20, etc. Okay? Now, the contact reason, okay, that particular column, it is going to store a string. Okay? So I'm going to leave it set up as nchar 10. And what the number 10 specifically represents is the maximum number of characters, okay, that can be stored in the column. Okay, so the string that will be stored in the column can have at most 10 characters in it, and that's fine for purposes of the contact reason. But if I go down to the next column, first name, you can see its data type is nchar 10 as well. Okay, well, it's possible that a first name could be longer than 10 characters, right? So I'm going to change the data type of the first name column so that instead of it being an nchar 10, it's nchar 25. Okay? So I can go right into this field and I can change the 10 to a 25. Make it longer. Okay, so now the string that will be stored in the first name can be at most 25 characters, which seems a little more appropriate for a first name. If you want, you could make it even longer, right? You could make it 50. You could make it 500. But for me, 25 feels appropriate for a first name. I'm going to do the same thing for the last name. I'm going to make it an nchar 25. Okay. Now, my next column is the contact date. It's going to store a date. So I don't want it to be set up to store a string. I want to change its data type again. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll through the list of data types. I'm going to look and see if there's anything there for date. And there is. Okay, right there, there are several different dates. There's date, date time 2, 7. I'm just going to choose the plain old vanilla date. Okay? Then the next column that I have in my table is for a phone. Okay, I'm going to keep the phone set up as an nchar. I'm going to treat it like a string. Okay, but a phone, if you think about it, right, it can have 10 characters just for the numbers, but then there are the 2 dashes as well that could go in a phone. So I'm going to change this from an nchar 10 to an nchar 12. Okay, if I'm doing the math correctly, I think including the dashes, a phone number could be 12 characters in length. Okay, now the message, I'm going to change that from an nchar, which is basically a string, to ntext, which means a big text blob, like a paragraph or 2 paragraphs. Okay, so I've gone through and I've changed the data types of all of the columns so that they're more appropriately suited to the type of data that's going to go into the columns. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change this property that's labeled allow nulls. Okay, what allow nulls means is that nothing can be stored in the particular column. If you allow nulls, that means when a row of data is populated, that a particular column can be left empty, okay, without any data. Okay, so there are a few columns in here that I don't want to have set up that way. Right now, all of these columns are set up so that they allow null values empty. They can be left empty when a row of data is populated, and I don't want them set up that way. For example, the ID. I don't want to allow it to be left empty. Okay, the same thing for the contact reason and the first name and the last name. Okay, and the contact date. I am going to allow the phone number to be set up so that it allows null values. Okay, but I want the message to be set up so that it doesn't allow null values, that it can't be left empty. Okay? Alright, so the only column in this particular table that can be left empty, that allows nulls, is the phone number. All of the other ones, they have to be populated with some value, with some bit of data. Okay? The last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to give this table a primary key. Okay, I'm going to make one of the columns the primary key column. Okay, a primary key is used for retrieval purposes to make the process of retrieving data from the table a little bit easier. And why it makes it easier is because a primary key has to have a unique value. Okay, so the ID in this particular table I'm going to set up as being the primary key. So what you do to set up a column as a primary key is you select it, you do a right click, and then you select from the pop-up that appears set primary key. And you know that you've done it correctly if beside the column you see a little key symbol. Okay, so the ID column is going to be the primary key for this table. It's going to contain a unique value. Each row of data that gets populated in this table will have a unique, okay, ID, okay, value. It's the primary key, and that makes retrieval of data from the table easier. Okay, now what we haven't done so far is given the table a name. Okay, to name the table, what you want to do is you want to save the table. So at the top of Microsoft Visual Web Developer, you can push one of the save buttons. Okay, I guess I'll push the one that says Save Table 1. And then at that point, a little dialog is going to pop up that says Choose Name. And what you're going to do is you're going to change the name of the table from Table 1 to some other name. And I'm going to name this particular table the Contact Table. I'm going to name it the Contact Table. I'm going to push OK. Okay, and then at that point, you should see the name of the table is changed in the tab in the center of the of Microsoft Visual Web Developer. It now says Contact. Okay, but also over in the Database Explorer underneath of Tables, you should see your Contact table. The Tables folder is no longer empty. Okay, it contains a table, and you should see it listed there, and you can open it up for that matter, and you should be able to see the columns that you've just defined in the table. Okay, so there it is. There's the Contact table. It has an ID. Okay, it has a contact reason. It has a first name, last name, contact date, phone, and message. And you noticed as I scrolled through those columns, as I went through those columns, you could see the properties of the columns down below. Okay, in the Properties window. Okay, so there's the table we've created. Now you could go into the Tables folder and you could add new tables, and you will. You'll add more tables to your website than just one. I'm not going to now because the process would be the same. Okay, but suffice to say, you could add as many tables to your database as you wish. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to populate data in the table. Excuse me. So to do that, what you want to do in the Database Explorer window is you want to select the table, in this case Contact. You want to highlight it, do a right click, and then you want to select from within the pop-up that appears Show Table Data. And a new tab should open up, okay, in the center of Visual Web Developer. Okay, and it should look something like this. Right now the table doesn't contain any data. You can see the columns listed. There they are: ID, contact reason, first name, last name, contact date, phone, and message. But you can see that there's no data. There are no rows of data populated. All you see are these values null, which basically means empty, void of data, right? What we're going to do now is we're going to go in and we're going to populate a couple of rows of data. Okay, so you simply place your cursor in that first column, the one that says ID. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to back out the word null, and we're going to type in an ID. Okay, a 1. Okay, remember the ID column has to store integers, numbers. Okay, so I'm inputting an integer, 1. And then you can tab over to the next field and you can type in a contact reason. Remember, the contact reason is going to store what? Strings that can have a length of at most, what, 10 characters. So I'm going to type in the word praise. Okay, then you can tab again, and I'm going to input a first name, tab again, input a last name. Remember, both the first name and the last name were set up to store strings, okay, that have at most 25 characters. So when you're populating data in the columns, you have to be mindful of that. Okay, then the contact date. Remember, it's set up to store a date. Okay, so this is an interesting part of the exercise, right? We have to input the date in the correct format. Okay, based on my experience, I think the format of the date should be as follows, where we have year, year, year. So 2015, I guess that would be year, 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 and then a dash, and then month, month, so 03, and then another dash, and then the day, day. Okay, which would be 18. Okay, and we'll find out when we go to save the data if that was the correct format. okay, that the date data type expects. Okay. Then I'm going to enter a phone number. Okay. Okay, set up the phone number so that it stores a string of at most 12 characters, and I think I'm okay there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. That should be fine. And then the message is set up to store a big text blob, like in the form of a paragraph. So I'm just going to input something. Okay, this is a message of praise. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to save the table data. Okay, and I didn't receive any error messages, okay, regarding any of the data that I input. This is one row of data. Okay, one row of data. Didn't receive any error messages, so I assume the format of that date was acceptable. Okay, oh, and notice that, as a matter of fact, look at the date. When I tabbed over to the next row, actually the format changed a little bit. It changed to month / day / year. So it looks like Microsoft SQL Server took care of formatting the date for me, and that's the date that it expects. That's nice. I didn't know that would happen. So that's very nice. So you don't really have to worry about inputting the data in the correct format. In the case of the date, SQL Server formatted it for me. But let's test this a little bit more to see how that all works. What I'm going to do is I'm going to enter another row of data. Okay. So I'm going to give the ID column a unique ID, an integer, a unique integer. Okay. And then I'm going to type in a contact reason that's longer than 10 characters. So let me think of something I can type in for the contact reason that's longer than 10 characters. That's definitely longer than 10 characters. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yes, so it's longer. So let me tab out of there and input the rest of the data. Okay, so now let's see what happens when I tab out of this row. If there are any error messages that I receive regarding the contact reason. What I input into the column is longer than what's allowed. So let me tab. Okay, and you can see I get an error message. No row was updated. The data in row 2 was not committed. And then there's an error message. String or binary data would be truncated. Okay, so you receive an error message. Okay, but if I change that to complaint, which hopefully is less than 10 characters, let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, I should be able to save that data, and I am, without any error messages. Okay, so that's interesting to note. Okay, so when you're setting up your table, when you're defining it, you're giving it properties like int, nchar10, nchar25, dates, etc., text blobs. So you have to be mindful of that when you go in and you populate the data in the columns, right? When I attempted to populate a contact reason that was longer than the allowable 10 characters, I received an error message. But interestingly enough, when I input a date that was not in the correct format, SQL Server automatically adjusted the date for me so that it was in the correct format. Okay, so interesting things to note. Okay, so you can save the data. Okay, if you close that tab and then go back over into the Database Explorer and you select Contact Table again, and you do a right click and you select Show Table Data, you then see your table data. Okay. Okay, so this ends the YouTube. We set up an empty website, and then we added a SQL Server database to the website. Then we added a table to the database. Okay, we set up the columns in the table. We defined their data types. We identified if null values would be allowed in the columns. We set up the primary key of a table, saved the table, gave it a name. Then we went into the table and we began populating data in the table. Okay, this is what you're going to have to do in the remainder of the course for your software projects. I hope this is helpful. If you do have any questions, don't hesitate to let me know. Thanks.